G'day Internet, it's Kale and Alex from mParticle here to introduce Media SDK. Now we've seen our clients struggle with collecting audio and video data because stakeholders in the organization all have different needs. They all want something slightly different, and that can lead to 2x, 3x implementations when you're trying to gather your data. For example, we've seen clients do a direct client-side implementation of Adobe or Nielsen for content ratings. We've seen on top of that, custom player events to drive downstream analytics tools. On top of that, custom milestone events for marketers. So this leads to a lot of work. And somebody who knows a little bit about this is Alex. Alex is one of our JavaScript developers, and he's also worked front end for media before. Alex, tell us about your experience implementing these kind of data situations.
Yeah, so in the past, like Kale said, I worked with various media companies working on their video products. And one of most of the times I would find myself spending a short amount of time on actually writing video code and most of it writing ad-related code. So having something like mParticle back then would have been a lifesaver because I could have just implemented one thing and not had to worry about it ever again. So
Sure, and plus if a partner changes their API,
I don't have to care about it.
Right, because we're managing all that for you. All right, so let's have a look about how the SDK actually works in an implementation.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to do a little bit of a before and after here. As you can see from my screen, there's a lot of boilerplate for Adobe. Now, it's understandable. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be configured. But by the time we get down here is when I'm starting to use JW Player, which is player of choice just for my own purposes. And as you can see, there's a very custom API for using Media Heartbeat. So if I were to implement Nielsen, for instance, I'd have to do something completely different with that. Now, if we switch over to mParticle, as you can see, there's a lot less code on my screen, mainly because all the configuration stuff is happening behind the scenes. And again, it's kind of a one-stop shop where I just use mParticle, and then mParticle divvies it up to all the different integrations that I would potentially use. And let's do a quick demo because sometimes that's more fun. As you can see here, we have a video player. We're loading an ad, and we're firing all these Adobe-specific logs and all these Adobe network calls. So here we have some start events. We have some play events here. And if we were to pause, the last event we would see is a pause event.
All right? And those will keep going as long as we're paused because they're like updating the heartbeat. Awesome. And so to be clear, this is happening without us directly calling any Adobe code. We're getting the configuration off the server, and our SDK is wrapping the Adobe SDK and passing in our methods as we call them.
Basically.
All right, that's fantastic. So that's sort of how it works on the client side. But of course, we're also, from these same APIs, sending player events like play, seek, skip, add skip, and also milestone events which tell you how much of a piece of content a user has watched, and we're putting them into the main mParticle pipeline. So let's actually have a look at what you might do with some of these pieces of data. So for here, I'm using my content milestone events, and I'm using mParticle's lifetime audiences feature, and I'm looking back at the previous year of time, and I'm looking for users who have watched 6 or more episodes of our show Super Celebrity Date Game. And this is just going to tell us who are those people that have really engaged with the previous season, and these are the users that I want to target with marketing for my upcoming season 3. So once I get this list together, I can use this list to drive email marketing, I can use it to drive push, and through mParticle's profile API, I can actually even use it to change the user's experience in my app by pushing this show up towards the front of what they'll see in recommendations. So that's a simple use case for milestone events. Similarly, in my downstream analytics tools, I'm forwarding information about the player and about the actions that users are taking, and also summaries of their video sessions. So as an example of what I might do with this, I've set up a simple little experiment between styles of player controls I can use to see what leads to higher engagement. So I'm giving some of my users an app with a VCR-style forward and back scrub seeking, and I'm giving other users 10-second skip buttons. And I'm tracking the average viewing time for each of those players, and as you can see here, I'm getting significantly longer average viewing time in a session with the 10-second skip button. So basically, that's the Media SDK. We're wrapping client-side kits to do content ratings on the client side, and then we're sending milestone events into mParticle that you can use to drive marketing audiences, and we're sending player events that you can forward downstream to your analytics tools that really gives product managers what they need to try and get your users spending the maximum amount of time in your app and really creating value there. And that's Media SDK. Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers.